Now I'll be joined by Phil Blumel, and we will roll into our first Scammy Award.
Hello, everyone.
The first award is Best Performance in Screwing Over the Voters. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Well, best performance in screwing over the voters. Okay, what do we got?
This one will not go to a person. This will go to a government body that has reached unique heights of sleaze, corruption, and underhandedness.
Okay.
Your nominees are the Arkansas State Legislature for passing a bill titled Ethics and Transparency that actually tricked voters into repealing term limits and giving legislators a 150% pay hike.
Bait and switch.
The County Commission of Pinellas, Florida, for refusing to put term limits in their county charter even after 73% of voters approved it.
Unbelievable.
The Metro Council of Nashville, Tennessee, for trying a fifth time to repeal their term limits and failing once again.
5 times.
And finally, the City Council of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, for merely existing and being filled to the brim with corrupt miscreants. Phil?
Yes, Nick.
Any analysis? Who do you think is the favorite to take this one home? Best performance in screwing over the voters.
I tell you what, there's been a lot of politicians across America and a lot of government bodies that have worked very, very hard to win this award. I think you've nailed down some of the best or worst performers, depending on how you want to look at it. And, there's certainly a case for all of these. I've got to tell you that the idea that voters in Nashville, with a overwhelming percentage of the vote, passed term limits with an initiative, and to have politicians almost every other cycle come out and try to overturn them, spend the money, to spend the time, to basically refight the same battles at their own expense, you got to admit, Nick, that is pretty egregious.
It is, but I happen to feel that the Arkansas legislature is the favorite on this one because they have really set a record for shamelessness, in my opinion, with this effort to change term limits in Arkansas from 6 years to 16 years in one seat. The way they did it was just unbelievably duplicitous. See, the people of Arkansas have always loved term limits. In 1992, they passed it with about 70% of the vote. In 2004, when the politicians tried to double the limits, the people rejected that with about 70% of the vote again. So what happened a few years ago was the politicians in Arkansas went into the smoke-filled rooms and they said, how can we trick the voters? If we tell voters we're repealing term limits, it's never going to fly. So we need a scheme of the worst proportions to make this happen. They cooked up something called the Arkansas Ethics, Transparency, and Financial Reform Amendment. It was a 22-page monstrosity constitutional amendment festooned with goodies, and not until page 15 do you learn that what this bill really does is essentially repeal term limits and give legislators the ability to increase their own pay. So the voters didn't know what was happening. They had no clue. They weren't aware of the fact that this had anything to do with term limits. They said, ethics, transparency, reform, that sounds great. Let's vote for it. It passed with 54% of the vote. They got to repeal term limits. They got the pay hike. And since that passed, there have been 7 Arkansas state legislators responsible for the amendment who have been convicted of bribery or fraud, including the mastermind of the amendment, a senator named John Woods. He's doing 18 years in prison for money laundering and masterminding kickback schemes. So I think that has to be up there. That's
going to be hard to beat. That's going to be a hard one to beat. But then again, let's look at Pinellas County, Florida. Back in 1996, 73% of Pinellas voters voted for an 8-year term limits law. It was to go into effect in January 1st, 1997. But the Pinellas County government never inserted the language into the charter because they felt that it was unconstitutional, even though no court had said so. Now, there was a court in another county that had made some tangential ruling that they leaned on to do this, but they said, it's unconstitutional, we're not putting it in. So 8 years later, it did not go into effect. Well, a few years later, the Supreme Court of Florida finally weighed in on this, and said that, yes, county commission term limits in this state are constitutional, and they always have been. So some of the counties that had not been enforcing their term limits started enforcing their term limits, except for one, Pinellas County, Florida. And their argument, it was never put in the charter. Ha! But they never put it in the charter because they said it was unconstitutional. When it was ruled that it was constitutional, they said, well, it's not in the charter. Try to beat that, Nick.
I don't know if I can. And with that, I'm going to open the envelope right now. The envelope, please.
I can't wait.
And the Scammy for best performance in screwing over the voters goes to Pinellas County, Florida.
Oh, Pinellas County, Florida.
Wow. Step right up, claim your Scammy, and get pelted with tomatoes.
I'm going to have to say it right here and right now. Pinellas County, Florida is the most corrupt county in the U.S. of A.
Absolutely. And you know what's so great about this? Well, not really great, but it's actually terrible. There are still several county commissioners from Pinellas who are serving on that board in defiance of the voters' will. They were elected after term limits were passed. They've served way more than the 8 years that voters approved. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this Scammy, we're going to stick it in a brown paper bag with some dog dew, light it on fire, and leave it on their stoop.
Excellent plan.